Bullies mock the shy girl's lunch. Huge mistake. She was Delta Force trained. Maya Angelou Washington sat in the far corner of Jefferson High School's cafeteria, her worn paperback novel propped against her lunch tray like a shield. At 17, she possessed the kind of quiet presence that made her nearly invisible to most students. Her oversized military surplus jacket hung loose on her slight frame, and her dark hair was always pulled back in a simple ponytail. Maya had learned long ago that being unremarkable was often the safest way to navigate the world. The cafeteria buzzed with its usual chaos of teenage voices, clattering trays, and the occasional burst of laughter that echoed off the institutional walls. Maya kept her eyes fixed on her book, mechanically spooning homemade soup from her thermos. The lunch her grandmother had packed that morning was simple but filling: vegetable soup, whole grain bread, and an apple from their small garden behind the apartment complex. Just get through lunch, she thought to herself, the mantra she'd adopted since transferring to Jefferson High 3 months ago. Keep your head down, finish the semester, graduate, and get out. Well, look what we have here. The voice cut through Maya's concentration like a blade. She didn't need to look up to know who it belonged to. Brittany Caldwell, the self-appointed queen of Jefferson High's social hierarchy, stood at the head of a small group of followers. At 18, Brittany had perfected the art of cruelty disguised as casual observation. Her platinum blonde hair was styled to perfection, and her designer clothes screamed privilege and entitlement. Maya's grip tightened on her spoon, but she didn't raise her eyes from her book. Don't engage. Don't give them what they want. I'm talking to you, Charity Case. Brittany's voice dripped with mock sweetness as she slid into the seat across from Maya uninvited. Her entourage, Jessica Parks and Amanda Stone, flanked her like eager hyenas. Maya finally looked up, meeting Brittany's cold blue eyes with steady composure. I'm just trying to eat my lunch. Oh, is that what you call it? Jessica snickered, pointing at Maya's simple meal. Looks like something they'd serve at a soup kitchen. Amanda leaned forward, wrinkling her nose theatrically. Seriously, Maya, where do you even shop for food? The dumpster behind the grocery store? The surrounding tables had grown quiet, students sensing the familiar prelude to entertainment at someone else's expense. Maya felt the weight of dozens of eyes on her, but no one moved to intervene. They never did. Dad always said the most dangerous enemy is the one who underestimates you, Maya thought, her father's voice echoing in her memory. Let them think what they want to think. At least I'm not buying my personality from a makeup counter, Maya replied quietly, turning back to her book. Brittany's face flushed red. The quiet girl's unexpected response had stung more than she'd anticipated. Excuse me? Did the little orphan just grow a backbone? Maya's jaw tightened at the word orphan, but she remained silent. Brittany didn't know the truth about Maya's family situation, but the word still cut deep. Maya lived with her grandmother now, had been for the past 2 years since her father's last deployment. The official story was that Colonel Marcus Washington was stationed overseas indefinitely. The truth was classified. I heard she gets free lunch, Amanda whispered loudly enough for half the cafeteria to hear. Like actual welfare food. That explains the thrift store fashion sense, Jessica added, tugging at Maya's jacket sleeve. Maya pulled her arm away, but Brittany was just getting started. You know what I think? I think Maya here needs to learn her place in the social order. Before Maya could react, Brittany reached across the table and knocked over Maya's thermos. The hot vegetable soup spilled across the table and onto Maya's lap, soaking through her jeans and burning her legs through the fabric. Maya shot to her feet, soup dripping from her clothes and her book ruined beyond repair. The cafeteria erupted in a mixture of gasps and nervous laughter. Someone in the back called out, "Fight! Fight!" But Maya just stood there, soup pooling at her feet, staring at Brittany with an expression that would have made a wiser person very, very nervous. Control, Maya reminded herself, feeling the familiar tightness in her muscles that came with the urge to act. These aren't enemy combatants. They're just stupid kids. Oops, Brittany said with fake innocence, not bothering to hide her smirk. So clumsy of me. Maya grabbed napkins from the dispenser and began cleaning up the mess without a word. Her movements were precise, economical, each motion serving a purpose. She'd learned long ago that reacting emotionally only gave bullies more ammunition. "Aren't you going to say something?" Jessica prodded. "Or are you just going to clean it up like a good little janitor?" Maya finished wiping down the table and gathered her belongings. Her copy of The Art of War was completely soaked, pages warped beyond salvation. She'd read it 17 times, knew most of it by heart, but it had been a gift from her father before his final deployment. "Actually, I think I am going to say something," Maya said quietly, her voice carrying a weight that made the nearby students lean in to listen. Brittany's eyebrows rose in surprise. "Oh, really? And what's that?" Maya looked directly into Brittany's eyes, and for just a moment, something flickered in her gaze. Something cold and calculating that made Brittany unconsciously take a step back. "Thank you for the lesson," Maya said simply, then turned and walked away. The cafeteria buzzed with confused murmurs. Students had expected tears, or shouting, or some kind of dramatic reaction. Instead, Maya Washington had responded with the kind of calm control that left everyone unsure of what had just happened. That wasn't the reaction they wanted, Maya thought, as she pushed through the cafeteria doors. Good. But Brittany Caldwell wasn't finished with Maya Washington, not by a long shot. The harassment escalated over the following weeks. Brittany and her friends seemed to take Maya's composed response as a personal challenge. They knocked books from her hands in the hallways, spread rumors about her family's financial situation, and made cutting remarks whenever they passed her in the halls. Maya endured it all with the same quiet composure, never rising to the bait, never giving them the dramatic reaction they craved, but inside she was making calculations, observations, assessments. Dad always said intelligence gathering was the most important part of any operation. She reminded herself during a particularly brutal morning when someone had taped a free lunch sign to her locker. Know your enemy better than they know themselves. Maya had learned that Brittany's father owned 3 car dealerships in town, that Jessica's mother was on the school board, and that Amanda's family had money from oil investments. She knew their class schedules, their after-school activities, and their weekend hangout spots. Information was power, even if she had no intention of using it maliciously. What Maya didn't know was that her careful self-control was beginning to unravel Brittany's confidence. The queen bee of Jefferson High was used to immediate gratification when it came to tormenting her targets. Maya's refusal to break down or fight back was starting to feel like a personal failure. "She's weird," Amanda complained during lunch one day. "Like, creepy weird. Yesterday I called her a loser, and she just stared at me with those dead eyes." "Maybe she's planning to shoot up the school," Jessica suggested with a nervous laugh. Brittany slammed her hand on the table. "She's not scary, she's pathetic, and I'm tired of her acting like she's better than us." The truth was, Brittany was starting to suspect that Maya Washington might actually be better than them, and that possibility was intolerable. Maya, meanwhile, had settled into a routine of endurance. She arrived at school exactly 7 minutes before the first bell, attended her classes with mechanical precision, ate lunch in the library instead of the cafeteria, and left immediately after final period. She spoke only when spoken to by teachers, completed every assignment with quiet competence, and maintained a perfect attendance record. At home, she helped her grandmother with household chores, studied for her classes, and spent long hours in the small gym her father had set up in the apartment complex's basement before his deployment. The punching bag, weight bench, and collection of martial arts equipment looked out of place among the laundry machines and storage units. But Maya had maintained her training regimen religiously for the past 2 years. "Stay sharp," her father had always told her. "You never know when you'll need these skills." Maya had assumed he meant for self-defense in college, or maybe during her own military service if she chose that path. She'd never imagined she'd need to resist using those skills against teenage bullies who had no idea what they were dealing with. Her grandmother, Elena Washington, watched Maya's careful composure with growing concern. Elena had raised 4 sons, including Maya's father, and she recognized the signs of someone carrying a heavy burden. "Mija," Elena said one evening, as Maya methodically cleaned the dinner dishes, "how are things at school?" "Fine, abuela," Maya replied automatically, "just focusing on my studies." Elena dried her hands on her apron and turned to face her granddaughter. "Your father called last week." Maya's hand stilled in the soapy water. Her father's calls were rare and always brief, limited by security protocols she didn't fully understand. "He asked about school," Elena continued, "wanted to make sure you were adjusting well." Maya resumed washing the dishes with careful precision. "What did you tell him?" "I told him you were strong, like him." "But Maya..." Elena placed a gentle hand on her granddaughter's shoulder. "Strength isn't just about enduring. Sometimes it's about knowing when to act." Maya nodded without looking up from the dishes. She understood what her grandmother was saying, but the situation was more complicated than Elena realized. Maya's father hadn't just been any soldier. Colonel Marcus Washington had been Delta Force, one of the military's most elite special operations units. The skills he'd taught his daughter weren't meant for high school hallways. "These kids have no idea," Maya thought as she finished the dishes. "They think I'm weak because I won't fight back. They don't understand that I could hospitalize all 3 of them before they knew what hit them." But Maya also understood the consequences of using those skills inappropriately. Her father had drilled into her the importance of proportional response, of understanding the difference between a real threat and mere annoyance. Brittany Caldwell and her friends were bullies, but they weren't enemy combatants. The breaking point came 3 weeks later, on a rainy Thursday afternoon in early November. Maya was walking to her locker after final period when she noticed a crowd gathered in the main hallway. Students were laughing and pointing at something, their phones out to record whatever spectacle had captured their attention. As Maya pushed through the crowd, her heart sank. Her locker was open, its contents scattered across the hallway floor. Her textbooks lay in puddles of spilled soda, pages soaked and torn. Her few personal belongings, a photo of her father in uniform, a letter from her mother who had died when Maya was 12, her grandmother's rosary, were strewn among the academic debris. But it was the writing on her locker that made Maya's carefully maintained composure crack for the first time in months. Someone had used permanent marker to scrawl "charity case" and "welfare queen" across the metal surface, along with crude drawings and profanity that made Maya's stomach turn. "Oh no," she heard Brittany's voice behind her, dripping with false sympathy. "Looks like someone's having a bad day." Maya turned to see Brittany, Jessica, and Amanda standing at the edge of the crowd, their expressions a mixture of satisfaction and anticipation. They were waiting for Maya to break down, to cry, to give them the emotional reaction they'd been working toward for months. Maya knelt and began gathering her belongings, her movements careful and controlled despite the trembling in her hands. The photo of her father was ruined, the protective plastic cracked, and the image water-damaged. The letter from her mother, one of only 3 she had, was partially illegible now, the ink running in blue streams across the paper. "I bet she's going to cry," Jessica whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Maybe she'll finally realize she doesn't belong here," Amanda added. But Maya didn't cry. Instead, she stood slowly, clutching her damaged possessions to her chest, and looked directly at Brittany Caldwell. "Did you do this?" Maya asked, her voice quiet but carrying clearly through the hallway. Brittany shrugged with exaggerated innocence. "I don't know what you're talking about. Your locker was already like this when we got here." Maya nodded slowly, as if accepting the obvious lie. "I see. Are you going to report it?" Brittany asked with a smirk. "Run crying to the principal like a little baby." Maya looked around at the crowd of students, all of them watching the confrontation with the detached interest of spectators at a sporting event. None of them would help her clean up the mess. None of them would serve as witnesses if she did report the vandalism. They were all just waiting to see if the quiet girl would finally provide them with some entertainment. They want a show, Maya realized. They've all been waiting for me to break. "No," Maya said quietly, closing her locker door with deliberate care. "I don't think I'll be reporting this." Brittany's smile widened in triumph. "Smart choice. Now maybe you'll learn to—" "I'll be handling it myself," Maya interrupted, her voice carrying a new edge that made several students take unconscious steps backward. For the first time since the harassment began, Brittany looked uncertain. There was something in Maya's tone, in the way she held herself, that didn't match the submissive victim Brittany had been tormenting for months. "What's that supposed to mean?" Brittany asked, trying to maintain her confident facade. Maya shouldered her backpack and looked directly into Brittany's eyes. When she spoke, her voice was calm and measured, but there was steel beneath the surface. "It means I'm done being patient." The hallway had grown completely silent. Even the usual background noise of locker doors slamming and students chatting had faded away as everyone strained to hear the exchange. Maya turned and walked away without another word, leaving Brittany and her friends standing in the wreckage of Maya's belongings. For the first time in months, Brittany Caldwell felt a flutter of unease in her stomach. That evening, Maya sat in her father's makeshift gym, staring at the punching bag that had become her closest confidant over the past 2 years. The bag bore the marks of countless training sessions, scuff marks from kicks, indentations from strikes, and worn patches where her hands had landed thousands of times. "I've been holding back," Maya realized, "trying so hard to be the bigger person that I forgot Dad's most important lesson." Colonel Marcus Washington had taught his daughter many things during their weekend training sessions, but the most important lesson hadn't been about fighting techniques or physical conditioning. It had been about knowing when to act. "There's a difference between being a bully and protecting yourself," her father had said during one of their last sessions together. "A bully picks fights for power or pleasure. A protector fights only when necessary, but when that time comes, they fight to win." Maya stripped off her school clothes and pulled on her training gear, simple black pants and a tank top that allowed for full range of motion. She wrapped her hands carefully, methodically, the ritual as familiar as breathing. The first punch landed with a sharp crack that echoed through the basement. Maya's form was perfect, her stance balanced, her core engaged, her follow-through controlled but devastating. The bag swung violently from the impact. "They think I'm weak because I haven't fought back," Maya thought, as she fell into a steady rhythm of strikes. "They don't understand that I've been showing restraint." For 2 years, Maya had maintained her edge through training, but she'd never had to use her skills in real combat. Her father had made sure she was prepared for any situation, but Maya had hoped she'd never need to prove just how prepared she really was. The next morning, Maya walked into Jefferson High School with a different energy. Her posture was the same, her expression remained neutral, but something fundamental had shifted. Students who passed her in the hallway felt it without being able to identify what had changed. Maya attended her morning classes with the same quiet focus as always, but she was also watching, observing, planning. Brittany and her friends noticed the change immediately when they saw Maya at her locker before lunch. The shy, submissive girl they'd been tormenting for months was gone, replaced by someone who moved with subtle confidence and purpose. "Something's different about her," Amanda whispered as they watched Maya from across the hall. "She's probably planning something dramatic," Jessica replied. "Maybe she'll transfer schools or something equally pathetic." But Brittany wasn't so sure. There was something in Maya's demeanor that reminded her of the way her father's security personnel carried themselves: alert, controlled, dangerous, despite their calm exterior. "Don't be ridiculous," Brittany told herself. "She's just a charity case trying to act tough." The confrontation came during lunch period, in the cafeteria where it had all started months earlier. Maya sat at her usual corner table, eating the lunch her grandmother had packed while reading a new copy of The Art of War. She'd replaced the ruined book the day before, and the crisp pages felt symbolic of her new resolve. "Look who's back in our cafeteria," Brittany announced as she approached Maya's table with her usual entourage. "I thought maybe you'd learned your lesson yesterday." Maya looked up from her book with calm eyes. "I did learn something yesterday." "Oh, really? And what was that?" Maya closed her book and set it aside carefully. "I learned that some people mistake patience for weakness." Brittany laughed, but the sound had a forced quality that her friends pretended not to notice. "Is that supposed to scare me? Are you threatening me?" "No," Maya replied, standing slowly to her full height. "I'm educating you." The cafeteria was beginning to take notice of the exchange. Conversations died down as students turned to watch the familiar dynamic play out once again. "Educating me about what?" Brittany demanded, her voice rising to ensure she had everyone's attention. Maya looked around the cafeteria, making eye contact with dozens of students who had watched her humiliation for months without intervening. When she spoke, her voice was clear and steady, carrying to every corner of the room. "About the difference between choosing not to fight and not being able to fight." Brittany's face flushed red. "Are you saying you want to fight me? Because I'd be happy to put you in your place once and for all." Maya shook her head slowly. "I don't want to fight you, Brittany. I never have. But I'm not going to keep letting you and your friends treat me like your personal entertainment." "Oh, poor little Maya," Jessica called out mockingly. "Finally grew a backbone?" Maya turned her attention to Jessica with the kind of focused intensity that made the other girl take an involuntary step backward. "You've been part of this for months, Jessica. All of you have. And everyone in this room has watched it happen without saying a word." The cafeteria had grown completely silent now. Students were filming with their phones, sensing that something significant was about to happen. Brittany, realizing she was losing control of the situation, decided to escalate. She reached for Maya's lunch tray, intending to repeat her soup-spilling performance from months earlier. "Maybe you need another lesson in—" Maya's hand shot out and caught Brittany's wrist before she could touch the tray. The movement was so fast, so precise, that most of the watching students didn't even see it happen, but they could see the result. Brittany's face went white as Maya's grip tightened around her wrist with steel-like strength. "Don't," Maya said quietly, her voice carrying absolute authority. Brittany tried to pull her hand away, but Maya's grip was immovable. For the first time, Brittany found herself looking into Maya's eyes and seeing something that made her blood run cold. "This isn't the same girl," Brittany realized with growing panic. "This is someone else entirely." "Let go of me," Brittany demanded, but her voice cracked slightly. Maya held Brittany's gaze for another moment, then released her wrist. Brittany stumbled backward, rubbing the red marks where Maya's fingers had been. "I'm going to report you for assault," Brittany said, but the threat sounded hollow even to her own ears. Maya smiled for the first time in months, and the expression was more unsettling than any angry outburst would have been. "Go ahead," Maya said calmly. "I'd love to explain to Principal Morrison exactly what's been happening in this cafeteria for the past 3 months. I'm sure the security cameras will provide interesting context. Brittany's face went pale. She'd never considered that the school's security system might have recorded her months of harassment. You can't prove anything, Amanda said, but her voice lacked conviction. Maya pulled out her phone and tapped the screen a few times. Actually, I can. See, unlike all of you, I've been documenting everything. Dates, times, witnesses, photos of the damage to my property. I've been building quite a comprehensive file. The three girls exchanged nervous glances. They'd never imagined their victim might be collecting evidence against them. But here's what's going to happen instead, Maya continued, her voice carrying clearly through the silent cafeteria. You're going to leave me alone, all of you. You're going to stop your comments, your sabotage, your little performances for the entertainment of our classmates. And if we don't? Brittany asked, trying to salvage some shred of defiance. Maya stepped closer, and Brittany instinctively backed away. When Maya spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper, but every word carried the weight of absolute certainty. Then you'll discover exactly why I've been choosing not to fight back. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Students throughout the cafeteria held their breath, waiting to see how Brittany would respond. But before Brittany could form a reply, Jessica made a crucial mistake. Whether from nervousness, stupidity, or simple inability to read the room, she chose that moment to push the situation over the edge. "You think you're so tough now?" Jessica sneered, stepping forward to back up her friend. "You're still just a pathetic charity case who—" Maya moved. The technique was called a takedown, a fundamental move in several martial arts disciplines that her father had drilled into her thousands of times. Maya stepped inside Jessica's reach, hooked her leg behind Jessica's knee, and used her opponent's forward momentum to send her crashing to the floor. The entire sequence took less than 2 seconds. Jessica hit the ground hard, the breath knocked out of her lungs, staring up at Maya with shocked, frightened eyes. The cafeteria erupted in gasps and excited chatter, but Maya remained perfectly calm, standing over Jessica with relaxed composure. "I tried to be reasonable," Maya said, extending her hand to help Jessica up. "But you insisted on escalating." Jessica scrambled to her feet without accepting Maya's help, backing away with obvious fear. Amanda had gone completely pale, but Brittany's shock was quickly transforming into rage. The queen bee of Jefferson High had just watched her friend get humiliated by the girl they'd been tormenting for months, and every second of it had been recorded by dozens of phone cameras. "You psycho!" Brittany screamed, launching herself at Maya with wild, undisciplined fury. Maya sidestepped the attack with minimal effort, using Brittany's own momentum to guide her past. As Brittany stumbled, Maya caught her arm and applied just enough pressure to a specific nerve cluster to send shooting pain up Brittany's shoulder. Brittany cried out and dropped to one knee, clutching her arm in agony. "That's called a pressure point," Maya explained conversationally to the watching crowd. "My father taught me about human anatomy. How much pressure to apply and where to cause pain without causing permanent damage." Maya released Brittany's arm and stepped back, giving her space to recover. When Brittany looked up, her face was streaked with tears of pain and humiliation. "How?" Brittany gasped. "How did you learn to fight like that?" Maya finished. "Same way you learned to be cruel, I suppose. Practice." Maya looked around the cafeteria, making eye contact with as many students as possible. When she spoke, her voice carried clearly to every corner of the room. "My name is Maya Washington. For the past 3 months, these 3 have been making my life miserable because they thought I was an easy target. They thought I was weak because I chose not to retaliate." Maya picked up her lunch tray and looked down at Brittany, who was still kneeling on the floor. But choosing not to fight and being unable to fight are 2 very different things. I've been trained in hand-to-hand combat since I was 12 years old. My father is Colonel Marcus Washington, Delta Force. He taught me to defend myself against actual threats, not high school bullies. The cafeteria was dead silent. Students were processing the revelation that the quiet girl they'd watched get tormented for months was the daughter of one of the military's most elite soldiers. "I didn't fight back because I didn't need to," Maya continued, "because you weren't worth it. But I'm tired of being your entertainment, and I'm tired of everyone in this room watching it happen without saying a word." Maya shouldered her backpack and looked around the cafeteria one final time. The harassment stops now, and if anyone has a problem with that... Maya smiled, that same unsettling smile. "Well, now you know where to find me." Maya walked out of the cafeteria with perfect posture and controlled calm, leaving behind a room full of stunned teenagers and 3 former bullies who were only beginning to understand the magnitude of their mistake. The aftermath was swift and decisive. Within hours, videos of the cafeteria confrontation had spread throughout Jefferson High's social media networks. But instead of the usual mockery that accompanied viral school content, Maya found herself receiving messages of support from classmates who had watched her endure months of harassment in silence. More importantly, Brittany Caldwell's reign as the untouchable queen of Jefferson High came to an abrupt end. Students who had previously feared her began to see her as what she really was, a cruel teenager who had finally picked on the wrong person. The 3 girls made one last attempt to regain control of the narrative by reporting Maya to the administration for assault, but Principal Morrison's investigation revealed months of documented harassment that made it clear who the real aggressor had been. Maya's evidence file, photos, dates, witness statements, and security footage painted a comprehensive picture of systematic bullying that the school could no longer ignore. Brittany, Jessica, and Amanda faced suspension and mandatory counseling. Their parents were called in for conferences that resulted in awkward apologies and promises of changed behavior. But the real change happened in the smaller moments. Maya began eating lunch in the cafeteria again and found herself joined by other students who had previously been too intimidated to approach her. She discovered that several of them had their own stories of harassment and had been inspired by her willingness to finally stand up for herself. "I can't believe you just handled them like that," said Marcus Chen, a sophomore who had been dealing with his own bullying situation. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" "From someone who taught me that strength isn't about hurting people," Maya replied. "It's about protecting yourself and others when necessary." Maya began teaching Marcus and a few other students some basic self-defense techniques during lunch periods. Nothing advanced, just enough to help them feel more confident and less like targets. The transformation wasn't just in how others saw Maya, but in how she carried herself. The careful invisibility she'd maintained for months was replaced by quiet confidence. She participated more in class discussions, joined the debate team, and even smiled occasionally. 3 weeks after the cafeteria incident, Maya was approached by Brittany after school. The former Queen Bee looked different, less polished, more uncertain, with dark circles under her eyes that suggested she hadn't been sleeping well. "Maya," Brittany said quietly, stopping her near the school entrance. Can I talk to you for a minute?" Maya studied Brittany's face, noting the genuine nervousness there. "What about?" "I wanted to apologize," Brittany said, the words coming out in a rush. "For everything. The soup, your locker, all the things we said. I was horrible to you." Maya waited for the rest, sensing there was more. "I keep thinking about what you said," Brittany continued, "about choosing not to fight versus not being able to fight. And I realized that I was choosing to be cruel because I thought it made me powerful, but it didn't. It just made me a bully." Maya nodded slowly. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want to be better," Brittany said. "I don't know how yet, but I want to try. And I thought maybe you could help me understand how to be strong without being mean." Maya considered the request for a long moment. The old Maya might have dismissed Brittany's apology as too little, too late. But her father had taught her that true strength sometimes meant giving people the chance to change. "Strength comes from knowing who you are and what you stand for," Maya said finally. "It means protecting people who can't protect themselves, not picking on them." Brittany nodded eagerly. Would you be willing to teach me? Like, how to be confident without being cruel?" Maya smiled, a real smile this time, warm and genuine. "I think that's something you'll have to figure out for yourself. But I can tell you this. The fact that you're asking means you're already on the right path." That evening, Maya sat in her father's gym, not to train but to call him. Colonel Washington's voice came through the encrypted connection with perfect clarity despite the thousands of miles between them. "I heard from your grandmother that things at school have improved," he said without preamble. "Did she tell you what happened?" Maya asked. "She told me you handled a difficult situation with exactly the kind of judgment I hoped you would. I'm proud of you, sweetheart." Maya felt tears prick her eyes at her father's words. "I tried to do what you taught me, to be strong without being cruel." "That's the hardest lesson of all," her father replied. "Power means nothing if you don't know when and how to use it responsibly. You showed those kids and yourself that true strength comes from restraint, not aggression." "I think some of them are starting to understand that," Maya said. "Good. And Maya, when I get home, we're going to have a long talk about everything you've been dealing with. I know this year has been hard on you." Maya wiped her eyes, smiling through her tears. "I'll be here, Dad. We both will." As Maya hung up the phone, she realized that the girl who had sat in the corner of the cafeteria all those months ago was gone forever. In her place was someone stronger, not because she could fight, but because she knew when fighting was truly necessary. The bullies had picked on the quiet girl, thinking she was weak. They'd learned too late that Maya Washington had never been weak at all. She'd simply been choosing to be kind. And that, Maya understood now, was the most powerful choice of all.